Let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, Albuquerque, it's been a while. So I'm gonna make this quick. I want to first and foremost thank the indigenous organizers of Standing Rock for standing up against colonialism right here on Turtle Island. And I want to thank the black leadership and the black organizers of last summer's uprisings after George Floyd was brutally murdered, going to the streets and demanding Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Because right now there's a shift. There's a rising tide of voices across the U.S. and across the globe that are finally rising and saying, "Free Palestine from the river to the sea." And they're saying, end ethnic cleansing at Sheikh Jarrah, stop the bombing in Gaza, and end U.S. military complicity and sponsorship of the bombs, of the weapons, of the prisons, of the checkpoints, of the walls that restrict Palestinians from being free. I just got back from Palestine about 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting with the families of Sheikh Jarrah, and they were saying, "Iz, how do we mobilize international support? How do we mobilize international support?" Because over the past month, or 2 months ago, there were protests after court hearings, and they were minimal. Not that many Palestinians came out. But something happened, right? Something happened. The consciousness of the folks who understood that colonialism is not only bad in the U.S., but it's bad elsewhere. Imperialism is bad elsewhere, are starting to rise up. The voices are getting louder. And so I want to do one message. I want to send a message to the families of Sheikh Jarrah and from Albuquerque, right? I want everybody to chant, "Free Palestine," or "From Albuquerque to Palestine, we will see freedom within our lifetime." All right? So after me, from Albuquerque to Palestine, we will see freedom within our lifetime. From Turtle Island to Palestine, we will see freedom within our lifetime. There is something big happening right now, and it's bigger than any intifada. Palestinians are rising up from Haifa to Jerusalem. Palestinians in Gaza are being bombarded, but at the same time, they're saying, we want freedom because we're dying under the bombs as much as we're dying under this siege, this 14-year siege. We need people to rise up because guess what? Your taxpayer money is funding this. We need to push Congress. We need to push Congress. We need to push legislators right now. There's a way that you can do this easily because of Adalah Justice Project, U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, and numerous Palestinian organizers who set up an easy link. All you got to do is go to bit.ly/riseupwithpalestine. There's a way that you can just autofill and like spam your legislators' inbox. But most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, we have to rise up with Palestine. We have to rise up with indigenous struggles here. We have to rise up with Black Lives Matter. We have to rise up with the queer and trans community. We have to rise up with feminists. Because anywhere there's injustice is everywhere there's injustice. Oh my God, wow. Momentum. Talking about that. There's no justice anywhere without justice everywhere. So, I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank the youth. The youth of Albuquerque, thank you for continuing to make noise for Palestine. And I also want to say that if the youth are interested in mobilizing in a national network, there is the organization Palestinian Youth Movement, which is a growing national organization, global organization of young Palestinians across the globe who are rising up along with our comrades. And I have a friend here who just moved here from Brooklyn, who is with Palestinian Youth Movement. Rami, where you at? Rami's right over there. So if you're interested in linking up with them, that's dope. And you can just follow them on social media at Palestinian Youth Movement on Instagram as well as Twitter. Thank you again.
Good job. All right, I have my next lineup of speakers. I would like Miss Melanie Yazzie from Red Nation. After her will be Jeff Haas, our Santa Fe people, and then Mr. Jim Harvey and George Lujan after them. Go ahead, Melanie.
Hello, testing. I just acknowledge all of you as my relatives and my people. Right? I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation. I'm indigenous to a land that's a little bit west of here. And as an indigenous woman, as an indigenous person, you know, I went to Palestine almost exactly 10 years ago. And what I experienced in Palestine changed my life as an indigenous person from here, from these lands where we're standing right now, right? It politicized me and it radicalized me, and I never turned back. And I became a stronger organizer. Because what Palestine taught me, there's two things Palestine taught me. One, that you should never give up on the struggle for liberation, ever. Your struggle in Palestine is our struggle here as indigenous people. Those American flags you tried to put up here earlier. The United States is to us, as my comrade Justine said, as Israel is to you as Palestinians, right? The United States illegally occupies our land here in the so-called United States. I do not recognize the United States as a legitimate entity. And one day, mark my words, this land will be ours again as your lands, right? As your lands will be yours again. And as an indigenous person who has had the gift and the honor of being a guest in your homelands, where you radicalized me and politicized me and taught me what liberation looks like, I will do everything I possibly can, as will the Red Nation, as an indigenous person from these lands, to struggle for your freedom as well. You know, I actually wasn't feeling good earlier. I almost threw up. I don't know, I think I had allergies or something, and I didn't want to speak today. But you know what? When it comes to Palestine, and when it comes to the liberation of indigenous people across the world, I'll get my ass up here on the mic to talk to you. Because I greeted you as my relatives. And as indigenous people here in the Red Nation, we made a pledge. We made a pledge years ago that we would hold our people, our tribal communities, and indigenous people who try to cross the BDS picket line accountable and responsible for apologizing for Israeli settler colonialism. How can you apologize for the oppression and the colonization of another people if you're just trying to do that here home? That's hypocrisy. And we see a lot of Native people do that here in the so-called United States. But the Red Nation, we stand up against that. We try to educate about this in our communities because we believe it is imperative for indigenous people and indigenous nations under colonial occupation by the United States to stand with Palestine and to stand with the liberation of Palestine. So this is what we stand for as the Red Nation. We've sent almost 10 indigenous youth, including my comrade Justine, to Palestine. Thank you to all of the organizations that have hosted us. But we have a strong heart around indigenous liberation and decolonization in the Red Nation. And we make this pledge 2 years ago, we make it today, and we'll make it until Palestine is free, that we will be here. We honor you as guests of our land. We extend our hospitality to you here on indigenous lands. And we will always be next to you and behind you and in front of you when you need protection as you are marching forward towards your inevitable liberation, okay? I love you all. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my comrade Justine. Sankitamu, everybody. Hello, my name is Justine Teba. I'm with the Red Nation. I am from the pueblos of Tusuki, Santa Clara, and Acoma. The Red Nation is an indigenous liberation organization, and that is why we are here in our utmost solidarity with our Palestinian relatives today on the 73rd anniversary of the Nakba. Every day for the last week, I wake up and I am horrified with news of more death, more genocide. I am horrified to see my Palestinian relatives attacked during one of their most holiest times of the year. And I'm filled with sadness and then rage. Every day I worry for my Palestinian comrades, and I wish I could hold each one of you tightly. I wish I could give each and every one of you a hug. Every day I watch mainstream news try to justify attacks on Palestine. And let me just say that this is not a two-sided conflict. This is not about Hamas. This is not a clash of religion. This is about the suffocation, policing, ethnic cleansing, and genocide of Palestinians by the will of the Israeli government. It is an outright massacre out there. I've had the privilege of visiting Palestine on a delegation with the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights back in November 2019. I have seen firsthand the occupation of Israel and Zionist terrorism, but I also got to see everyday Palestinian existence and resistance, the iron will to live a dignified life. Just like here on Turtle Island. And I have made this simple connection that the Palestinian struggle is an indigenous struggle. And from there I saw an entire world of parallels. The olive trees and groves that were burned and uprooted by Zionist settlers in an effort to displace and starve Palestinians are the cornfields that were burned to displace and starve Pueblo people here in Tiwa, Teba, and Dinah territories. I even saw the suffocation of Palestinians from being able to move freely in the West Bank, just like how Pueblo people once could not travel between pueblos or on horse. I saw the same border imperialism that separates Palestinians from one side of town to the other in Hebron, in the same manner that border imperialism separates us from our southern relatives in Mexico and beyond. What I can conclude is simple. The Palestinian struggle is an indigenous struggle because it is a struggle against settler colonialism and occupation from the United States and Israel. Do make that connection when talking about exactly what is happening in so-called Israel. And do make that connection that settler governments like the United States and Canada are to the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, that the occupational government of Israel is to Palestinians. Israel is an apartheid state. It is an occupation, and it's not just committing ethnic cleansing, as I said. They're committing genocide against Palestinian peoples. They meet just about every definition of what genocide constitutes as under the UN Declaration. Every day, we get a new number of how many Palestinian children have been killed. Today, I read 31. 31 more innocent lives added to the 3,000 children taken in the last 20 years. One of the defining moments of my delegation in Palestine was on the last day when we were there. We went to the Church of the Nativity where Jesus Christ was born. After we were done, we went to the Adalah refugee camp just a few minutes away. And it was there I saw a giant arch with a giant key on top of it that represents the keys that Palestinian elders took with them when they were displaced from their homes, with the full intention that they will use those keys again and they will return. Underneath the arch, there was names of over 300 Palestinian children in Gaza who were murdered by Israel. And across that, there was a memorial of another Palestinian young person who was sniped by the IDF for existing. And in that same moment when we were there was a group of Palestinian refugee children who ran around the corner chasing their soccer ball because they were running away from a tear gas canister that the IDF threw at them when they were playing. Mind you, the chemicals in this tear gas also causes birth defects and damages fetuses. They are really out here attacking Palestinian children before they even have their first breath of life, and all through the rest of their lives. Attacking children, those who represent a Palestinian future, are being attacked daily. What a vile and evil way to go about the earth. And just know, Israel, know that the world is watching. And come to find out, each one of these tear gas canisters that are used in Israel say, made in the USA. And that is because they are field tested on Palestinian children before they are marketed back to the same forces in the United States to be used on our resistance movements, such as the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016, or the fogs that you saw during the Black Lives Matter movements last summer. They are the same canisters field tested on Palestinians, used to suppress their movements and also used to suppress our movements over here. And that's what this is really about. This is about settler occupation and U.S. imperialism. There is a reason that the U.S. funds billions of dollars every year for this terrorism. Their interests as settler occupiers are the same, whether it's here in the United States or in so-called Israel. Their fight is wrong, and it will always be. Their fight is for things that are unnatural and unhuman. And their fight, it creates a fake history that creates glory for these settlers that steal the land. Just across the street over here, at this monument to DeVargas, one of our comrades, Scott, was shot by a settler, all in the name of protecting this settler fiction that justifies their existence. Because when they get to create their own history, when they ignore the real truth of their history, they then are free to make it to whatever they want it to be. But we know this as fact that that is a fake history. And despite all the terrors of these occupational governments, there is still resistance. We see a return to home by Palestinians in diaspora from Jordan and Lebanon. There is a clear understanding about our common goals. And our common goals are revolution. Our common goals are land back. But ultimately, our common goals are dignity. And that is what the fight is. That is what the fight for indigenous liberation is. Here on Turtle Island, here on Palestine, and every other country where there's occupational forces. The fight is to land back. The fight is to end settler occupation, to end U.S. imperialism, to end capitalism. And that simple understanding is why I and the Red Nation offer our undying solidarity and love, our resistance to settler colonialism, our everyday will to live in dignity is simple. And that is why I urge each of you to listen to our Palestinian comrades when they say boycott, divest, sanction, to write your Congress people, to do everything it takes to let them know that we don't want our tax money over in Israel because it is used to steal and to kill Palestinians. And as my comrade Orion said earlier, he posted on Facebook, he said, Palestine will be free, the land will be returned, the people will be free, the olive trees will grow again. And I say, revolution is for the children. And it fills me with joy to see all the children here. Revolution is for those children, those 300 children's names who I saw written in Adalah. For all children taken from us. The revolution that we create with our lives is for them. Long live the Intifada!
Thank you, Red Nation!
Palestine does exist! BLO! Israel no! BLO! Israel no! BLO! Israel no! BLO! Israel no! BLO! Israel Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea!